Hi there. Welcome to or welcome back to Tiff Reads Books, where I read books and I talk to you about them. It is really hot today, and I chose to film down here instead of up there in the AC. So please bear with me if I get a little shiny. It's just how it's gonna be today. It is the end of the month, so I thought I would do my weekly wrap up and combine it with my July TBR. I have kind of some options for July, some things I really want to get to. A lot of them are audio things, and then I have a couple of physical reads that I really want to do. And we're just gonna have a little chat about him. So I did finish Nona the Ninth last week, and I don't think I talked to you about it because I think I finished it after I filmed. So I did finish Nona, my second read, and I was ready to just like jump back into the series again. So I wouldn't be surprised if you catch me listening to a couple chapters of Gideon this coming month just to make myself happy. Nona wraps up the series. Well, it doesn't wrap it up. It catches us up because there's one more supposed to come. God, Tamsin, just a scrap of Electo news would really make my year when it has not been a great year. So, but Nona the Ninth is the third book in the potentially 4-book series of the Locked Tomb. And this series, there's really no way to talk about Nona, the plot of it at all, without spoiling anything in the other books. So it's just one of those you'll have to get into. The tone changes so much between the three. This is one that I would say is probably like more clearly sci-fi, where Gideon can very easily be fantasy, but it's fantasy, it's futuristic fantasy. So hold on, I got my watch wet and it's rubbing my hand and I don't like it. Okay, anyway, look at that tan line. Gideon is more fantasy based, but it is futuristic, and that's where the sci-fi element comes from. We have like a little bit of a spaceship, but we're never in it. No, Harrow takes place almost entirely in like a spaceship, but it is still a little more fantasy given the things that happen. We're starting to get into some of the sci-fi elements, and then in Nona, we are like on a planet in a different galaxy. We're discussing things that are happening in this wide world, in this futuristic sense. We're very much dealing with military stuff, and there's some class war stuff happening that's fascinating. So it's each book is very different, and that's like kind of there's no way to talk about the plot. But I can tell you that Nona gives you so much more background information on the world, because we are following a character who is not sure of who they are. We're learning so much about the world as the character is asking questions about things and learning about the world around them. We're really getting immersed into the world as far as like what is actually happening, and getting it from a different viewpoint. So second read of Nona, I really liked it. It's still my order still goes Gideon, Harrow, Nona as far as like my enjoyment. Harrow is really close there with Gideon though. After the second read, the emotional impact of Harrow really kind of like did me in this time and definitely put it closer up there to Gideon. But I think my love for Gideon, just for being the introduction to the series for me, is really just still keeps it. It's like a nostalgia thing, even though I only read it like a year and a half ago. But anyway, so finished that one off. Then I read Ocean's Gadori by Elaine Yu Cho. I did this on audio. I think it might be a better physical read just because there was a lot of information kind of coming at you, and I had to like rewind a few times and be like, wait, hold on, what was just happening? Because I tend to listen to audiobooks when I'm doing other things. And so there was a little bit of information there that I definitely felt like I was like, I need to reread this maybe. So I did really enjoy it. It was kind of slow up until maybe the last like 20%, when suddenly all the pieces started coming together and everything started happening. It's very character driven up until that point. We're really just kind of learning these characters and sitting with them. I did really enjoy it though, and the second book in the series comes out this summer. If you watched my summer releases video, it's in that list. So I'm looking forward to continuing the story kind of right where this one left off, and following these characters and seeing what happens and what unfolds. But definitely recommend it, especially for a easier to comprehend sci-fi, because it's not a hard sci-fi. So it reminded me a lot of a Firefly-esque sci-fi. So I recommend it. I read an arc for a comic collection called You. It's beautiful. And the title really spoke to me, and it's yellow with these crows on it, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna grab this. It's Read Now on NetGalley. So I went ahead and looked at it. I believe it comes out in July. So I do recommend it. I think it was a lot of fun, especially if you just want something lighthearted that you can like pick up, read a couple comics that'll kind of make you laugh a little bit and put it down. It was very good brain break. Each page is essentially a new comic strip, and it's all focusing on birds. I'll put a couple of the images up from the Barnes & Noble advertisement, so these are already out there available. And the humor is very kind of dry and observational, and it kind of gets you because it feels very conversational, in the sense that it's not like outrageously humorous. It's just kind of like a, that's kind of funny, like type of thing. There was a couple of things that really made me laugh. It's just very calmly quietly funny. I don't know how to describe it, but I really enjoyed it, and I liked the illustrations too. Okay, 2 more things that I read this week. I read In an Absent Dream, which is the Wayward Children number 4. So The Wayward Children is by Seanan McGuire, and it follows these kids who go through portals to other worlds and then come back. And it's kind of following them as they deal with the world around them and like reintegrating and understanding what happened to them, but from the perspective of these worlds were the first place they really felt they fit in, and then they had to lose that and come back to a place where they didn't feel that they fit in some cases didn't feel loved or cared about, and they're struggling to adjust, and they all want to go back. And so it's them kind of dealing with the grief of that as well. So the stories have all been kind of heavy so far, but in a kind of, it's in such a fantastical way that it makes it easier to deal with. This one is probably my least favorite of the 4 so far, but it kind of got me in the end. And I think it follows one of the characters from the first book, and it's her story it's her beginning. It's like her prequel story. So you don't have to read it if you read the series, but I think it was worth reading to understand a little bit about that character that we didn't get a lot of time with in the first book. I'm going to go back this month and reread it, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Reread the first book. So anyway, In an Absent Dream. So we're following Lundy as when she is from a child to a teenager, as she goes and finds the Goblin Market and learns about the rules in the society and how to function within it. And it's a very strict rule-based society. One of the reviews I said something about how they heard the term fair value so many times they still have no idea what it means. And I actually think if you're paying attention, it does tell you what it means. I think the fact that Lundy from a child's perspective didn't understand it makes it, if you're not actually processing and you're just listening or thinking from Lundy's perspective, but if you're not actually thinking about the words, I could see not understanding it, because Lundy struggled to understand it so many times because she was 8 years old at first and then was like a teenager in the last scenes. And essentially there's this idea in this Goblin Market that if you give something, you need to get fair value for it in exchange. And it's kind of a way that it's the way the society runs. And you don't have to give fair value back to the exact same person. You give it back to the community. And so it's this idea of a community being a symbiosis in a sense, where if you have read A Prayer for the Crown Shy, it kind of deals with this, where they have these pips that if you do a favor for someone, they can put pips on your account, and then you can like use those to get something from somebody else, because when you're benefiting a community, you're benefiting everybody. And so I think that's a concept that can be a little different if it's not something that you've discussed before or read before. But I liked how it was done in here, because it wasn't the people within the world giving consequences for people not putting back into the community and only taking. It was the world itself giving the consequences. And so it was kind of almost like an idea of karma, or I kept thinking of like Full Metal Alchemist's like equivalent exchange law type thing. It's very much like, it doesn't have to be the same thing you're giving back. It doesn't have to be payment in terms of money. It's a fair value of something. So like I enjoyed that kind of philosophical aspect of it. I think Seanan McGuire has some really fascinating ideas about things. And these books have such a good way of discussing that children know more and see more and understand more than our society as a whole gives them credit for. And it's something like I've been guilty of in moments and stuff too. Like every adult does it, because kids see things in such interesting different ways, but that doesn't mean they're not understanding things, and that doesn't mean that they can't be given like information in a way that they can understand it. Like, I really like that she does that. It reminds me kind of a lot of the way that Philip Pullman writes about Lyra in the his Dark Materials series, where she's a very precocious child. Or is that just how children are in this world? Because that is how children are, that if you give them the ability and like the benefit of the doubt on understanding things, that they will understand a lot more than you expect them to. And so I kind of like that aspect of it, I think, as someone who's not really a kid person, but has a lot of nieces and nephews and does remember being a child who was not necessarily was understanding things and was having people assume that I didn't. And so there's that. So I liked the ending a lot. It was this emotional gut punch, but I think leading up to it, I kind of struggled with it a little bit because it was very, the way that it was written was very narrative. There wasn't a lot of us being there in the moment. It felt as if this was a story being told to us in the aftermath of things. And there was a couple of times where like the narrator broke the fourth wall. And so I think that was the point of it. But for me, I really prefer to sit with the character in things. Like all these high action moments, we were told about them after the fact instead of getting to witness them. Some of that is that this is a novella, but I would have kind of liked it to be a little longer and to be able to see some of those like highly emotionally impactful scenes instead of just being told they happened. So the style of the writing of this one didn't necessarily gel with me very well, and that's kind of why it was a 3.75, because the ending really brought it up. It was like going to be a fine 3, but the ending just really brought it up for me because of the emotional impact of the consequences being given, and the stuff that happened. So yeah, I'm continuing with the series. So the last book I read, I just finished today. I won't be probably finishing another book today, so we're just gonna, this is my last book, is The Four Profound Weaves by R.B. Lemberg. So this was a novella that I found on Libby. It's very interesting, the way that it's written. It took me a minute to figure out kind of what was happening, and I think again this is one that's going to be really better to have like read physically than to listen to, even though the narrator is really good, and it could just be that I needed to actually be like really focusing on it, but I think reading it physically would be better. So we're following 2 characters, and that took me forever to figure out because it's all in first person. So when you're switching character perspective, you're switching to the first person of the other perspective. And there is a little tag apparently at the top of each of the chapters or the chapter breaks that says which character. But because I'm listening to it, I'm hearing the narrator just say that character's name. And so I thought it was just like a continuation of the thought or the dialogue. And it took me a minute to be like, wait, that's a pause. We're switching to a new character perspective. So that was that. But essentially we have these 2 characters that live in different but overlapping societies in this kind of deserty location. And we also have them both being under the thumb of a tyrannical ruler at the time. So they're both from like kind of minority communities within this culture that views them as less than but wants to take from them because they're like, they trade things. So one is like a weaver, and the other one, I don't think he is a weaver, but he's like, he used to be, I think he used to do weaving. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it was so much easier. I think it would be a lot easier to read it physically. But basically we have these intricate societies that have this intricate magic, and whether it's weaving or song, these 2 things are kind of like built into there. So the 4 profound weaves are essentially weaving, what is it? It is wind, sand, song, and death or bones. So it's like, I can't remember what wind stood for, but sand was like travel and song was hope, and then the bones was death. And so it was like the 4 like these pillars of their life essentially. And so these weaves can all be woven into one great weave, essentially. That's the tapestry of life type of thing. So it was kind of interesting magic there, and both the characters were trans, and they used these wind is change. That's what it is. It's change. So they used these woven carpets to go and call down their deity Bird to have Bird change them into who they know they are. And then they have to adjust to new life, presenting physically as who they've always been internally. And one of our main characters, he is really struggling with that because his community, while it's an option to them, he doesn't believe that it's as accepted. And so he feels like even more of an outsider now that he's gone through the physical change and is presenting as a man that he's always presented previously as a woman, knowing on the inside that he was always a man. And so he's really struggling with like adapting to this new life and this new presentation. And then our other character, she went through that same change when she was a small child. And so she is like, I always knew, and I was able to do it as a child. And so this is my life. This is my body. This is who I've always been. And she's trying to like get him to kind of like deal with his grief of his like previous life and all of this stuff, in the middle of them dealing with this tyrannical ruler. I think it could have been a little bit longer maybe for some things, but I definitely think reading it physically would be better. I did enjoy it, and I did think it was a good book, and the narration was really good. I just think it was going to be easier to follow reading it physically, given those chapter breaks with the characters, or I guess if you know going into it, you're going to be switching character POVs, and I didn't expect that. So, but I did really like it, and I think I'll be looking for more from this author. So this is not part of a series, but it is part of a larger world where this author has written a lot of books within this world. So that is what I read in the last week. And then I'm going to switch gears a second here and tell you what I'm going to read in July. So let's do a TBR. Well, it's an option. It's a menu, because I don't know if I'll get to all of these. So one of the things I learned this month is that I need to really stop worrying about whether I'm reading something physical or on audio, because I'm always a big proponent of audiobooks being valid and being a great way to consume books. I think they're fantastic. And for some ways, for me, they're easier than a physical thing, and they're more enjoyable sometimes. Sometimes they're worse. So I think they're very valid. So I'm like, why am I differentiating on way I'm reading it? The only reason that I'm differentiating is so that I can talk about the audio narrator. That's literally the only reason. So some of these books I will be doing on audio and some I will be doing physical. And I've decided even my owned books, if I want to read them on audio, that is fine. I think that's where I'm kind of getting stuck with going through my TBR shelf over here that you can only see part of, is because I have them physically. So I'm like, why would I get them on audio? Why wouldn't I? If I want to read them on audio, and if that's going to make me read the books that I own, and then I can pick them up and I can switch back and forth, that's perfectly fine. So that's kind of where I'm moving forward. And once I made that decision for last month, my reading started progressing a lot. Even my physical reading started progressing because I felt less pressured to actually read it in a specific way. And I'm like, who is putting pressure on me? Just me. I'm the only one putting pressure on myself. So no pressure, July. I've picked 9 books. This seems to be really good for me to just pick 9, and then if I read more than that, great. If I don't read more than that, also fine. So I've picked 9 books. I did read 8 of the 9 for last month, and I did have 2 DNFs, but we'll talk about those maybe at the end of the year. I'll talk about all my DNFs because I haven't DNF'd many things, but I did DNF 2 books. So let's just go into July. My first thing is I do have 2 NetGalley audio arcs that I'm very excited about. They come out in July, so I will be starting with these books. The first one is Girl in the Creek by Wendy N. Wagner, and I talked about this in my summer releases book list, and this is essentially I believe a reporter finds a body in a creek out by, I believe, Mount Baker in Oregon. I talked about this like 3 days ago, and my brain is like, no, we didn't retain any of that. It has a fungus thing, and it has a potentially like disappearing body, and has to do with the fungus, and I'm very intrigued by this one. So I have the audio of that. I've never used NetGalley's audio device thing because you have to listen to it in the app. So I'm curious to see how that works, and I'm kind of excited about it. The next one is The Library at Hellebore by Cassandra Khaw, and I talked about this one too, because this one does come out in July as well. So these both come out like, I think, the 15th and the 22nd, so I need to get them read. This is a dark academia with monsters being the professors. So that is the gist of what I remember. Cassandra Khaw, I read their book, The Salt Grows Heavy, and it was very pretentiously written, which I really enjoyed. There were so many like $5 words, but not in a way that made it like bother me, but I enjoyed the writing style of it. It felt very like ethereal and confusing at the same time as like kind of understanding what was happening, just not the details of what was happening, and that I really liked. So curious to see how this one goes. Very excited. I am also in the middle of reading Snake Falls to Earth by Darcy Little Badger. This is a upper middle grade, lower YA book, I believe. I put it on to read at night while I'm like trying to do my wind down thing, so I could just listen to like 20 minutes of a book that wasn't gonna like overstimulate me too much. So I've been enjoying that. So I'm like 25% in. I'm just kind of listening to a little bit every night. It's my bedtime storybook, and we're following two different characters. One is a girl her great-grandmother died, and when her great-grandmother, right before she passed away, she started telling our main character this story in a partially in Spanish, but also partially in a language that the language app couldn't understand. And so she has like the printout, like the transcript of it, but it's not accurate. It's just what the app heard, and it couldn't translate some of these words. And so the story is a little bit lost, and now she's doing like a family tree project. And so she's trying to find out more about that side of the family. And then the other story is about a snake person who he got sent on his own for the first time, and he's just trying to like live his life, and he's having little adventures, and I'm assuming he is the snake that falls to earth. So I'm enjoying the two kind of stories. It's just a very nice thing to listen to. So I will probably finish that one relatively soonish, middle of the month or so, and I'll pick another like nighttime story that I can just kind of like listen and relax to. So then I'm going to pull something off my shelf. I'm going to read Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. That is this one here. I bought it physically, but I have a copy on Libby ready to go. So I will be listening to this one as well. And I believe it's only like a 6 or 7 hour audiobook, so it's not going to take me a long time, which will be good, because I want to see if I like the series. This is one of those, when I talked recently about the biological science fiction stories, this one is supposed to be one of those, which are things that I realized I really like recently. This follows a biologist and her team as they investigate an area called Area X where people have gone missing, and there's supposed to be some fungal horror elements, and I'm curious about this one because it seems to be really hit or miss for a lot of people. I'm also going to be rereading Every Heart a Doorway, because now that I've read books 2, 3, and 4, which all cover characters that we were introduced to in the first book, I feel like I need to go back and kind of listen, because I read it physically the first time, but like at the end of last year. So I think I need to just go back and reacquaint myself with those characters and what their story was, because I'm like, wait a minute, what was this about this character? Just to give it a quick re-listen, and then I'm going to jump into books 5 and 6, which I have them all on Libby ready to go. Book 5 is called Come Tumbling Down, and I actually don't know what this one is about, so let me look it up for you. So this follows Jack again, who we also followed in the second book, and we met in the first book. Jack and Jill are twins. So this is when Jack left Eleanor West School for Wayward Children. It's a spoiler for the first book, so we're not going to talk about that. But basically it talks about how what happened when they went back into that world. So I am going to read that book, and then I am going to read book 6 as well, so I'm going to pull that one up. Book 6 is Across the Green Grass Fields, and I think this is the Horse Girl one, which I was a horse girl who read like Saddle Club and Thoroughbred books, and you can see in a lot of my videos. Which side is it on? It's over there. My camera's angled differently, but my Black Stallion book is in the background of a lot of my like videos when my camera's angled different and stuff. Like I read those books when I was a kid. So this says, welcome to the Hooflands. We're happy to have you, even if being here means something's coming. Reagan loves and is loved, though her school friend situation has become complicated of late. When she suddenly finds herself thrust through a doorway that asks her to be sure before swallowing her whole, Reagan must learn to live in a world filled with centaurs, kelpies, and other magical equines, a world that expects its human visitors to step up and be heroes. But after embracing her time with the herd, Reagan discovers that not all forms of heroism are equal, and not all quests are as they seem. So this one says it's a standalone in this world as well, which book number 4 was a standalone too. So this one is a lot of people's like not favorite. So I'm gonna read 5 and 6 this month. I'm excited. I really am enjoying the series. Like I said, I love Shauna McGuire's opinions on things. And then I'm going to read a physical book that I've been putting off for a long time. It's time for a Robin Hobb. It's time. I'm gonna start the Tawny Man series. I am actually unsure if I've just missed Literary Diversions live shows or if they have been put on hold. I need to figure it out because I haven't been reading because of those not happening, because that was really kind of keeping me motivated, having people to talk about. But a few of my friends are reading this on Instagram this month, and I'm very excited to just like yell at them about it. So I will be definitely doing that. I don't know how I'm gonna try and start it physically. It is 650-ish pages. I'm going to try and read it physically, but if that becomes too hard, I'm just going to pick up the audio. I am going to allow myself the grace to do that because this isn't my job. Like, nobody cares but me about how I read these books. And as long as I am reading them, I don't care how I read these books. So this is my little paperback, Half Price Books copy. Or maybe I got this at... No, I got this at the bookstore at the Dusty Shelf, which is a used bookstore near where I work. So I will be hopefully starting this and finishing it. But I am also emotionally very unready. So we'll see how that goes. I do want to start it this week though, so that I can really get into it. I have not read any of the Robin Hobb books physically yet. I've been reading them all on audio, so I'm excited to like sit with the words and try something different. And the last book on this little list is The Homecoming by Zoe Apostolides. I have no idea how to pronounce that last name. But this is the one. I also talked about it in my upcoming summer books. I did get approved for the ARC. It just came through the other day. So I will be reading this from NetGalley. It comes out in July, so I'll probably start this one soon too. And I will just be like reading all the different books at the same time. Which is kind of how I like to live. So I just need to get back to that and maybe things will get a little bit better. So this one is the one that I said sounds kind of like A Woman in Black, where we have someone so she's going down to interview someone so that she can write their life story, and she uncovers like a second uncovered story, or the second story that she uncovers, and it's supposed to be a small cottage. It's actually a sprawling like piece of land. And I love this fish species that's on the cover. So that's what we're doing. So that is my TBR. I did just get an email today that I got approved for the e-arc of Muted. Let me grab something really quick. So at Comic-Con, at Emerald City Comic-Con, I got a sampler of this. And the lady at the desk pitched it to me as Swamp Sapphic Witches. And I went, yes, please. I don't need more. I will take it. And then I put it on my shelf and I forgot about it. And then when I was scrolling through NetGalley, they were like, hey, you can request an arc of the full thing. This also is a webtoon. So I could go on Webtoon and read it, but I don't need another platform. Okay? That's the thing. I don't need another platform. So I was like, let me read this one. I'll read this sampler physically, and then I will pick up the graphic novel through NetGalley. You can only read it through their Shelf app. So I got approved for this today. So this will also be on the list. And that is another thing I haven't been doing recently is comics. And I love picking up a comic or a graphic novel or a manga. So one of the other things I'm tempted to do this month is my library does have all the omnibus collections of Attack on Titan, and I might go pick them up to finish out the series and just spend a weekend binging Attack on Titan and finish it. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. A couple other exciting things, maybe, kind of, I don't know. I'm working on my D&D campaign, always. So I've got to write some D&D stuff. I have a potential possibility of starting to run a couple of Candlekeep mini campaigns for a new player and a seasoned player and maybe a couple other people. And it's exciting because it's a group that I've never run for. I've always run for the same like 12 people. So just rotating them in and out. So I'll be curious to see if I'm actually okay at this or if it's just because it's my friends. So that could be kind of fun. I've got that to plan. And we have so many things coming up this month that I'm excited about. My friend and I are probably going to go to one of the zoos is doing an adults only day. So I'm going to buy tickets for that and we're going to go have an adult day at the zoo. It's a 21 and over day at the zoo. So that way we can actually like see the exhibits and stuff. And that'll be super exciting. And then it's the Northwest Highland Games are coming to, my area, and I went last year and I had so much fun at the championships. The women's championship, we got to see like an arena record. And we got to see, then after she beat the arena record, she beat the club record, and then she beat like, I was so amazing. I was so excited. So it was like so much fun to just stand in the beer garden and yell things like when they were doing the caber toss, just yelling like flip that pole, like it was so much fun. I really recommend it if you have the Highland Games in your area. So we're gonna be doing that this month, and then I'm getting ready to go to Scotland and Ireland for a friend's wedding and to visit all my friends, and I'm very excited about that. And I might be able to meet up with somebody from YouTube, Infinite Library. I'm very excited. Hopefully be able to catch up with them, and that will be like just a little cherry on top of my trip. So exciting things are happening, and I'm trying to be positive about them. So that is where I am at. Thanks for sitting down and listening to me yap about what books I am going to be reading this month and what I finished up in the last week. And if you like this video, give it a like. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe. If you can follow me on Instagram if you want. I am always over there shouting about things in my stories. And I will see you soon with something else.